It's an absolute pleasure to be here with everyone today. And I'm actually logging in from London for today, as unfortunately, as with many of us, travel has been severely disrupted. But thanks to collaboration platforms such as this one, we were able to actually be together virtually. And I really appreciated hearing some of the feedback and the comments of the earlier panel, and I took some notes. Some conferences, there's a lot of objective despair almost at the state of the world. Criminals getting smarter, tools not keeping up, policies that are not harmonized, strategies that are behind. But there is optimism, and I hope that in this session you will find some in the form of artificial intelligence. You see, for the vast majority, I think, of these last 2 years, we've been in this mood and in this mentality of we've never been here before, how do we come out of it? But I would like to offer some examples of practical use cases where AI has stepped up to help us humans overcome these challenges, because I would actually submit a rather controversial point here, which is we have been here before. Global disruptions, travel disruptions, if I think back to the volcano eruption or to other big moments during history, we have had situations that have caused major disruptions to businesses in the past. And as such, what we have is an evolution of technology that has allowed our businesses to adapt faster. Our workplaces adapted very, very quickly. So have attackers. And so this back and forth between attack and defense is generally the narrative, but we also have another thing to think about, which is the misconfigurations, the human errors, even for very well-trained individuals. All of us on this event today, I'm sure we all have our personal stories. So what are we going to talk about today? Yes, cloud technologies, but you know the current cloud security landscape. I don't want to spend too long on that. But what I want to offer is a bit of a philosophy change of thinking of cybersecurity, not in terms of policies and rules, but in terms of technology that enables us to resist disruptions and allow for business continuity. And we'll see how this happens in practice. For those of you who are not familiar with Darktrace, at its heart, we are a mathematics company. We are an artificial intelligence company that has applied to scale the challenges of cybersecurity, not only in detecting, but allowing that AI to respond on its own, autonomously. And that, I think, is a big change, because we heard from the previous speakers that it's so important to have that visibility, to have that understanding, and then be able to respond. Unfortunately, many times, though, the attackers hit at a moment where the humans are not able to respond, either because we're on vacation or because it's the middle of the night. And so AI can step in and help us there. Of course, virtual collaboration tools have all increased dramatically in their uptake. Although personally, I've always worked with the vast majority of these because I am very international. I grew up in Italy, I am Brazilian, I live in England. Usually I'm on an airplane, but I'm also all around the world, thanks to the fact that these collaboration tools already had matured. And that's how also they were able to expand and scale to the challenge that the world faced. But for many administrators, it is new technology. And unfortunately, new also means a lack of familiarity. And many junior DevOps could and have made mistakes. One quick example is an engineer who accidentally downloaded an update, or what they believe to be the correct update for a particular software. They were doing everything right. They were thinking they were doing the right patch and update, but unfortunately, this update included a crypto miner, which then led to an infection across multiple cloud products and production systems. And after that initial infection, that malware started beaconing out to command and control servers, which that activity, though, was very unusual for this particular company. And so once that external connection had established and the attack mission instructions were delivered, and the crypto malware infection then rapidly spread across the organization, including 20 different cloud servers in under 15 seconds, no human team alone can sort of stop that machine speed attack. And so these are the kind of examples where artificial intelligence can step in, can help gain time back to the human defenders. Because that was an error, but attacks are increasing. There is no question about this. Every report has already confirmed this. Threat actors are not limiting to one technology at a time. And so as they are playing through these applications and as they are targeting different applications to find those vulnerabilities, as a security awareness, we need to think big picture. These applications, even Microsoft, who announced the partnership with Darktrace for cybersecurity in May, they are fantastic at giving granular and proactive controls for users in each application. Darktrace allows, though, the security team to have that holistic understanding, because we are able to understand that uniqueness of your organization across all of the different applications, across all the cloud environments, devices, users. It doesn't matter. Those breadcrumbs of then the attack or the unusual behavior of an attacker that is a little bit different than that of the legitimate user is exactly how we are then able to spot and stop those cyber attacks. How? Darktrace doesn't learn based on past attacks. What we do is we have the artificial intelligence train and learn directly on your business. No two businesses are the same. Even two financial institutions, both of which having about 500 employees, will be very different. One might have a BYOD policy, one might not. It's not just about policies, it's also who are your partners, who are your suppliers? What do those interactions look like? So an immune system, much like the human immune system, is one that is able to uniquely understand the complex and the weird and wonderful things that happen only in your environment, and evolve that understanding over time, because things change over time. So when you're working across different environments, when the world changes, when policy changes, the organization needs to adapt, the workers adapt, the AI also adapts. And it's thanks to this adaptive learning that we can also trust it to take that autonomous response. What we have seen with this technology, especially in the cloud and SaaS space, is that hundreds of customers rely on Darktrace and Antigena, which is that sort of digital antibody, to step in and help the humans. Also, one of the previous panelists spoke about the importance of a layered defense. I completely agree, but I would say that your layers have got to be different so that what one fails to detect, the next one approaches in a different way. So there's no point rewriting the same policy 3 times over. What I would say is, once you have the policy, great. Do you have a way to understand? The other thing that I have with policies, and whenever we're speaking about policies, especially for cloud environments, is that I often find that they are very restrictive, especially for international businesses. And businesses in Africa, of course, with so many nations, so many different languages, so many different variations of what could happen, often restrict workers and frustrate workers. So what we can do is we can reduce the number of policies that we have to the bare minimum, so that we are thinking about them as signposts and guide, but allow the AI to then interpret what the normal pattern of life, what the normal pattern of business is, and allows that enforcement to happen. In a network or practical diagram, we have to have one of these. Think of it like all of the data centers and the perimeter and the network, right? That's your physical office space with all of your servers. You have doors, you have locks, you have CCTV. Ooh, we have CCTV, so now we have actually a supplier perhaps. So we start thinking of how that boundary, that perimeter is already slightly flawed, especially as we then start putting on third-party technologies, cloud environments, virtual environments. Of course, we are working from home. Are we using sensors? Do we have manufacturing? Do we have remote manufacturing? It doesn't really matter because the immune system can understand all of that. It's all the parts of the body. It's all the parts of the business. And because of that, we are wanting to allow more and more for workers and businesses to adopt technologies to allow them to work better, faster, more efficiently, without introducing so much risk to the organization. Inherently, though, by introducing these applications, we are introducing complexity, we are introducing risk. And it's not feasible, I don't believe it is feasible for us to expect a human defense system to be able to keep up on their own, especially when we have seen this fail already. Here are some cloud threats. Any of you have experience with these? Any of you have experience with all of these? Of course, I think the answer is yes. In some way, we all know, either are in our own lives or in the lives of somebody near to us, of people who have suffered cyber attacks, cyber incidents, or compromises that have left us a little bit surprised maybe at how could this happen? And of course, it happens all the time. So let's have a quick look at some of those practical examples. First of all, I love talking about mainstream renewable power, excuse me. They are a customer of Darktrace in the United States. It is a critical national infrastructure, as are so many of Darktrace customers all around the world. And Mark Kane has delivered a wonderful interview, which I also encourage you to watch on the Darktrace website, in which he talks about how the transformation of the business into a purely cloud environment with the Microsoft Office 365 has allowed them to be more flexible, has allowed them to have those controls, to implement those policies. But at the same time, they felt that they couldn't imagine all of the different things that are likely to happen. And that's exactly the problem, right? Because cyber criminals come up with new attacks. The vast majority of cyber technology systems are still looking to find known bad things from happening again. And they fail. We see this all the time. So what I would ask is all of you is, yes, do the cyber hygiene. Yes, have your basics and your education. But let's skip ahead of the lessons learned and realize that it is not enough. And even when we do those things, the mentality of cyber defense has to shift to a more holistic view, not just of policies, but also in terms of proactive defense. And how are we actually going to deliver that? And the reason why I think of that is because actually, statistically speaking, the vast majority of breaches is actually caused by misconfigurations. Let's just think about this a second, because actually this report from IBM has pointed out that alongside stolen or compromised credentials, misconfigured cloud service actually tie for the most frequent initial threat vector in breaches, and that's 19%. But breaches due to cloud misconfiguration then result in the average cost of a breach that increases by more than $500,000 every one of this. And this was also actually confirmed by Neil McDonald at Gartner, who has said that nearly all successful attacks on cloud servers are the result of customer misconfiguration. I would also say, for some of you who have already seen me speak at other events, emails continue to be the #1 entry point. Why? Because that is a human who is behind that misconfiguration or that mishap. And for me, it's impossible to think of email security without also thinking of SaaS security and cloud security, because all of those lines, all of those silos mix into one. So what happened? Well, what we had is a Showdown Attack. A financial services organization was hosting a large number of critical servers as virtual machines in the cloud. And some of these were meant to be public facing, but some of these were not. And when configuring their native cloud controls, the operator mistakenly left an important server exposed to the internet when it was instead meant to be isolated behind the firewall. And this could have happened for many reasons, probably and possibly because of a quick and chaotic migration, or maybe because they weren't familiar with the native controls provided by that cloud provider. Regardless of how this came about, it left the security team completely unaware of this critical misconfiguration. The exposed server was actually discovered and targeted by cyber criminals that were scanning the internet via Showdown, which is a search engine that catalogs all internet connected assets. And within seconds, our AI, the cyber AI, had detected that this device was actually receiving a very unusual amount of incoming connections. And the only reason why it figured out that that was particularly different was because it was able to compare it to its peers, compare it to its pattern of life, and understand that something was slightly amiss. All of this makes us realize that no matter how much we are thinking proactively, in any organization, employees don't want to stop and wait for cybersecurity to keep pace, to modernize and innovate their operations. And I'm extremely proud of the work that we do with McLaren, a great example of high-speed data transfer, which is no problem for Darktrace, an AI that can comfortably keep up with all of the data from the racing team in less than 100 milliseconds. So it's that AI that enables McLaren to focus on what it wants to, being successful on the racetrack, operating at machine speeds, and then leaving the self-learning AI to adapt and learn from the digital environment. And with this is why we can basically think of AI and the help that AI can bring into the cloud and SaaS environments in a much more collaborative way to keep pace with these changes in the world. With that, I'd like to thank you so much for your participation and give it back to the studio.